Hello and welcome to Illuminations with Tiina and Fee, for you who desires to live a life of joy. I'm Tiina.
And I'm Fee.
Hello, Fee.
Hi,
So,
Tiina.
we were talking about boundaries last time. Was there something that you want to recap from last time before we kind of throw ourselves into exploring how we have healthy boundaries?
Yes, well, I was just so that we get a handle on, we were talking about a variety, you raised and introduced a variety of boundaries, which are all very, helpful. And we talked about maybe sometimes it's, not having boundaries so that you can connect with people so that you're not closed. And also it's just bearing in mind that we're not talking about people walking around with very rigid boundaries, so that they don't move forward or connect, or they end up having a very narrow view of the world. What we're talking about, boundaries. So, for example, I was thinking the indicator for me that my boundaries have not been in place is if I end up stressed, resentful, disappointed. All of those, I now know there's something around boundaries. And there's a great TED talk, which I'll talk about in nuggets, by Sari Gilman, just checking the name. And I've seen it a couple of times. And she talks about how its lack of boundaries can actually lead to quite a lot of stress. And I'm thinking, when I end up running around like a stress head, which I can choose, if I sit down and look back, it's because my boundaries are not in place. So Brene Brown, we've mentioned, talks about big, and I've just got my head around the G of big, the generous. So the boundaries, that you keep your integrity. And she suggests that by having boundaries and keeping your integrity, you are more able to be generous about the actions of others and have that belief that everybody's doing the best they can. Mm-hmm. And that's quite a challenging belief. Having done the Daring Way, that was one belief that caused quite a lot of controversy in the room. And she sums it up beautifully. She said her husband says he doesn't know about whether that's true or not, but actually his world is better if he believes that everybody's doing the best they can, which is lovely. Yeah. So I just wanted to recap on that. So in this episode, we're going to look at how. So I'll start off by just using the book again by Gillian Anderson and Jennifer Nadel, because the way they talk about it in there is, the golden rule is to be kind. And we talked about how sometimes I get a bit snipey because what Sari says bizarrely, that setting boundaries can be stressful, Yes. And Brene Brown talks about discomfort, but she talks about it being brief discomfort. And the same as Sari, she talks about sweating it just for a moment, because that moment of discomfort brings a lifetime of release. And that's what my mantra is around boundaries. So I can get a little bit like tense around it, and then my prefrontal cortex goes on a bit of a holiday because I'm probably triggering off a whole load of fight, flight and freeze, and I don't say it quite how I want, but it's practice. So we were going to look at methodology and also some language, and there's some words that I found that are really helpful, because boundaries are, what is okay and what's not okay, as simple as that. So if I'm trying to tell someone what's not okay, that's probably more challenging for me than saying what is okay, in a way, although that is about expressing wants and desires. So I'm not comfortable saying it makes me feel, because nothing makes me feel. It's my chosen response to what you say. You call me a fat cow, and it's my chosen response to what you say will make me feel like a fat cow or not. In my head, I could go, well, really, don't think so. So it's making it a bit complicated for me. So I found these words with Harriet Lerner, who I think, you inspired me to read, The Dance of Anger, which came from Terry Cole. And I've got an old, I think a newer, older book than that, but anyway. And these words were like heaven to me. They were like, so it's very simple. I'm just checking I get it the right way round. Yes. So it does not help me when. And that I like. It does not support me when. So I might say, look, I'm really, working on la-di-da-di-da, it does not help me when. And I've used that quite a bit, and it's very, very helpful.
Okay, so there's something about finding the right words and the language for you, obviously, and that's individual to all of us then, but you know, when we read up on the subject, then we can find different words to use around that. And I think sometimes it's also about, okay, so reading the words and kind of going, yeah, I can use that I resonate with that feels good to me. And then it's the practicing of those, you know. And sometimes I talk to people about practicing the word no.
Yes.
Because sometimes that is so foreign to us, you know. It's kind of say, no, thank you, not at this time. No, I can't. No, I'm reserving my time for something else. And sometimes I even say to people, okay, so just get a trusted person, somebody you trust, that maybe your husband, maybe your mother, maybe a friend, maybe your father, whoever, and just say to them, ask me to do something with you, or ask me for a favor or something, and then I will just say no. You know? Because sometimes it is so foreign, this no saying, because there's kind of like an auto yes. Terry Cole talks about, you know, skipping the auto yes. And it's kind of in the practice of the work.
And I learned this a long time ago when I was working with a very demanding boss. I learned the assertive sandwich, which I often teach to people, because it's saying no in a way that's if you're practicing putting down boundaries, it's a bit softer. So, you know, I would love to do that. At this time, I'm blah, but I maybe could do it then, or you tell me what I can't do now so I can do that at some point in the future. Assertive sandwich, I agree. Sorry, that woman that I was talking about last time, Sari Gilman, she talks about a compass with yes and no, and being aware of, you know, the yes and the no. And I suppose, you know, that's where it's about, isn't it? You know, getting to know yourself and listening to your gut, and getting that practice of gut instinct and gut response, you know. And if your gut's going, no, don't want to, you know, and you go, oh yes, you know, Mrs. Umbridge in the world of Brene Brown, you know, that's where then, you know, you kind of go, yeah, but actually underneath it all, and it seeps out in some bitterness or some resentment, or someone else gets it, the cat or the partner, or, you know, someone gets that in kind of internalizing of the lack of saying what you want. Absolutely.
And I think also when you're a yes sayer, if you kind of resonate with that and you kind of go, that's me, it's good to have that 24-hour rule, you know, your standard answer. Oh, thank you for asking. I need to check with my partner, my family, or as simply saying, thank you for asking. I have decided to have a 24-hour rule for anything. So I will always say, I'll come back to you, you know, to give yourself time to kind of go, do I want to? Don't I want to? What's my gut saying? You know, you don't have to give an answer straight away, you know.
That's a Terry Cole tip, isn't it? I remember her saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so we're finding words, finding language that fit you, practicing saying no, because it's okay. Then we've got a 24-hour rule. What else can we say is a good thing to?
Well, I go on physiology as well. That often helps. You know, if I'm going to say no and I'm sitting there in some kind of like, you know, really kind of defeated, more victim state, that is certainly not going to give over, you know, the boundary or the desire or the want in a clear way. And sometimes when, you know, I remember working with someone who was a comms expert. She was marvelous, really inspirational, and taught me loads. And she was saying, if you don't get the response you get, the message isn't clear. You know, you can't blame the people who are hearing it. You know, you have to be very clear. And so I look at physiology. So that's what I'm now practicing, because I think I've got some language that I'm comfortable with. I think I've played a little bit of a game in going in and being a little bit humble about it. And now what I want to do is, so I practice the physiology of, if I'm here confident, you know, I'm confident in this being my boundary, then how would I sit? How would I speak? You know, how would I be? And so I'm practicing that sitting stance quite a bit, so that if it comes up, I can then automatically go into that, which will trigger to my brain, okay, here we go, this is fine. And then that will stop the maybe getting snipey, because it'll come out more relaxed and more clear. So physiology, yeah, very helpful.
Excellent. Yeah. And that's also, you mentioned practicing, you know, you practice it
Yes,
so that you're ready if and when it happens,
absolutely.
even when you need it, you know.
Yeah.
So,
So can you think of a time when you've more recently been successful in boundary setting and putting a boundary out down?
well, I have been a yes sayer.
Fair enough.
So it's like, oh, you know, somebody asked me this, of course I'm going to say yes. So I recently had a message on LinkedIn with the lady who wanted to talk to me about a product, and want to know if I want to have a chat with her. And before I would have gone, yes, of course. Now I was like, I just literally, you know, it wasn't setting a boundary, but it was just inquiring a little bit more. Okay, what is the intention for the call that you want to have with me? You know, what are we actually going to talk about? And I got some more information, and then I actually had a real think. Okay, can I fit it in? You know, we're both busy bees at the moment, and it's like, okay, can I fit it? Okay, yeah, I can fit that in. And then it was interesting, because in the call she said, or asked me, you're a bit hesitant, you know, to agree to talk to me. How come? And I simply said to her, listen, I'm just practicing my boundaries, and I just needed to kind of do it instead of just saying yes. It was all very gentle, and, you know, nothing, you know, it's like, it's conversation. It's conversation. There was one thing I really wanted to pick up on a little bit before we end, because we have to end soon, is we can understand how to start having healthier boundaries, whether we've had too rigid boundaries, or if we've just had no boundaries at all. You know, just kind of find that middle ground that works for us to improve our own relationships, and to improve how we are experiencing the world and ourselves. Sometimes I think it can be a good idea to explore a little bit what lies behind the lack of boundaries or rigid boundaries. So, for example, we've said fear of rejection is one that, you know, well, if I say no, or if I do this, then will I be rejected? Another one is fear of conflict, you know, and we might have stuff that's happened to us in the past that make us really, really fearful. Like, it's a real fear of conflict. And fear of abandonment. Like, if I say this to my partner and kind of say, this is not okay for me anymore, your behavior or how you talk to me or whatever, will he leave? You know, and I can kind of relate to that very much. And I know exactly why that is, due to a childhood event. Now, I'm not a newborn baby anymore, or I'm not a 1-year-old baby anymore, you know, but still my body and my mind react the same way, you know, due to this fear of abandonment. And that's very real in here, you know, and our brain is there to protect us, you know. It goes, I know this fear. This is like life and death for me, because that was the experience then. I will do anything to not that happen again, you know, survival, you know. So sometimes setting boundaries can be about something that we need to kind of understand, or where we gain a lot from understanding the reasons why. And sometimes when we know the reasons why, we can go, right, okay, now I understand. And then we can be compassionate with ourselves, going, I understand why it's hard for me to do this, because it's connected to something that was really significant then. So yeah, understanding why.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's interesting, isn't it? Because some people will need that understanding and some people won't. They're just happy to get on and change the behaviour.
Of course.
And but I do believe as well, and I do believe that if you're not being successful, and if I was keeping on being snipey about this and wasn't learning to be different, then I think you're bang on. I would probably come and talk to you about it, and I have done, sharing what's the challenge around me setting boundaries and what might be the barriers getting in the way. I think you're bang on. People, it would be helpful to then, explore those barriers. And I think I love the language you introduced about healthy, because this is about healthy boundaries. So that my world, live in resourceful state, in your world, live your own kind of wonderful. So I think that's, if you're not, it might be worth exploring, okay, how can I change this?
Yeah.
And if you're having challenge around moving forward on that, that's a very good point.
Good. Explore it, indeed. We're out of time. I was like, I want to talk about this now. Don't have time. Another time, I'm sure we'll return to this subject in one form or another some other time. So thank you ever so much for watching. And if you liked it, just send it to friends and family who might also get something good out of it, and subscribe. Why not? Fee, I will see you next time.
See you, Tiina.
Bye now.
Bye now.